Hello, and welcome to Sports by Compion. My name, of course, is Stephen Compion, joined here by my ever clever, ever beautiful co-host, Dan Gill. Dan, how are you today, sir?
Amazing. I don't know about clever, but you always give me the nice pep talk with these intros.
What are you talking about, man? You're one of the more knowledgeable people we've had on this podcast. Definitely not me or
Uh,
Corey. You are the brains of the operation, some would say.
we'll leave that up for debate.
Today, we will be discussing MLR expansion opportunities. Before we get into that, I wanted to talk about the importance of supporting USA Rugby. USA is a huge country, obviously. And for me personally, it's very embarrassing that we're not better at rugby. Now, I know it's not a national sport here. I know it's not something that people take seriously. It's mostly a European, Southern Hemisphere sport. But I still think the U.S. produces some of the best athletes in the world. And of course, most of them go play football, basketball, and such. Now, granted, those guys are making way more money. Can't fault them for doing that. But I think there's enough trickle down effect. I think there's enough trickle ex football players, just athletes in general coming up, that USA Rugby should be a bigger thing. We should at least be able to dominate everybody on this side of the ocean. What is going on? How did they not qualify for the World Cup? It's pretty embarrassing. I think it's overall just the lack of interest from fans, lack of interest from players in general. So I do want to see USA Rugby grow in leaps and bounds over the next, 3 to 5 years, 20 years, or whatever. And I think a huge way to do that, get more people watching it. Way to do that is by being in more cities, drawing more exposure to rugby.
No, I agree with you there. I think one of the other keys is that the USA Rugby has struggled in terms of developing a youth program. So I know when I was growing up, I think it wasn't until I was in high school that I recall ever hearing about a rugby program. It kind of covered my county. It wasn't the town. It was in our centralized main city for our county, if you want to call it. So I think that's kind of the first step there is like they need more youth programs, whether it's a rec league, maybe even high school teams, that play weekly against each other. Something. I know USA Rugby will never turn over to NCAA, but there is college rugby. So like if you set that feeder system, I think that's really what it's lacking. And once you do that, it'll help it leaps and bounds there.
Absolutely. And the rugby culture is something really beautiful and something amazing that should be shared here in the U.S. and continue to grow. I came over from football, and here to tell you, it's just a way better culture in rugby. I think people care about each other a little bit more. I think the teams are more tight. Not to mention the socials at the end of games, which bring together different teams. I have plenty of friends within my division, so it's always fun to go out there and play against your friends, right? And you don't want to do anything when you're playing against your friends. You absolutely want to destroy them. I mean, me personally, at least. So I think it creates rivalries. I think it creates good friendships. Not to mention when you go on tour, a lot of these guys came with us from other teams, so now you're playing on the same team as them. Heck, maybe in a lot of the sevens tournaments that are going to be taking place this summer that the Ravens will be involved in, we're combining with other teams for it too. So it's a great way to build friendships, and heck, my phone is full of rugby players at this point. So I think it's a
Yeah,
great way to be.
no, for sure. I often find when I talk to friends that have played other sports, even at higher levels and stuff, they think it's absolutely insane that we go beat the living hell out of each other for 80 minutes,
Yeah,
and then you and I are drinking a beer, eating food together, cracking the wise, and having a good old time. And hey, like Appleton, we met four of their guys out on the town, and we hung out with them for the rest of the night. And people are like, why? And it's like that's like you said, that's the culture.
that's the
It's a very
culture.
welcoming culture. I remember when I first went out there and met all y'all. Good old Tim Harn was like, you know, meeting you for the first time. You play rugby, you're one of us. We'll find out later if you're weird, but by the end of the night, I couldn't have convinced you that I just met that man that night by the way we were all acting with each other. And that's the same with anybody that shows up.
It really kind of goes like that. Yeah, obviously the beer and everything helps to surround this rugby culture, but yeah, there's nothing like it. Like I've been out on the field, getting into it with guys, talking a little shit on the field, a little bit of roughhousing and such. But the minute that whistle's called, man, you're right there talking to that guy after the game. Like, yeah, it's all good, man. We just get a little heated. Everyone wants to win, right? It's a competitive sport still. You're still trying to be up there winning, but that is the beautiful thing. Once that whistle is blown, it's all over, man. Now we're buddies. And I think, everyone goes, especially guys who play a whole 80 minutes, like that's a shared, kind of thing. Like I remember you'll be in minute 60 and you're going into your like 90th scrum of that fucking game or whatever. And you'll be like going against those other forwards. They're exhausted. You're exhausted. And there's a little bit of banter back and forth. Oh man, the back knocked on the ball again. Can you believe this stuff? It's a lot of fun.
No, I love those scrums. Yeah, I love when you guys get the same point because I know there's so many times I lock up in the front row. And we're just kind of like, we're just gonna kind of be all fair and nice to each other right now because this is about the 5th scrum in a row.
Exactly.
Someone keeps knocking it.
Yeah. So rugby's a beautiful culture. Would absolutely love to see this expand. The U.S. has tons of potential, tons of different places we could be expanding to. I'll start off my list with a couple of them, starting with Arizona. Now, Arizona is out there on the West Coast. There are a couple of teams in the MLR who are on the West Coast, and actually some of the better teams in the West Division. So they're going to have their work cut out for them to get into the good graces of their fans by getting some wins, but would absolutely love to see Arizona get into this mix here. They don't even have to go with Phoenix. What's that other city they have?
Tempe.
Tempe.
The second one was California.
No, but what was it? It was like Tempe.
Scottsdale.
Scottsdale. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, you could either do Phoenix or Scottsdale. Either one would be a good choice. I think there's lots of opportunity there in Arizona.
No, another there. Strong market out there.
For sure.
They have good programs down there.
Another Midwestern state that gets overlooked all the time, very few professional sports out there, is Kansas. Now, Kansas is one of those states that they call a flyover state, which I always find very insulting. But anyway, they are in desperate need of professional teams. They don't have an NFL team. They don't have any XFL, USFL teams. I'm sure they got some baseball, but I mean, who watches that? But yeah, I think Kansas could be a potential. Start showing these Midwestern Southern boys what rugby's like. I bet a lot of them don't even know what it is.
They're not.
They do not. The other city we're going to talk about, which I know you have on your list as well, Dan, is Wisconsin, Milwaukee. That would be a perfect rivalry with them in Chicago, who has recently come up. Obviously, Wisconsin and Illinois have a natural rivalry already. The Wisconsiners have a not so flattering name for Illinois people, Fibs, which, if you live here in Illinois or in Wisconsin, you know what that means. We won't get into it. But either way, strong rivalry could be formed right away. Obviously that's already happened in the NFL with the Bears and the Packers. So you gotta start forming these rivalries for people to be interested in, and I think that's a great way to do it.
No, and I mean, I think, Wisconsin has such great rugby products right now, whether, it's the college level, the youth programs, and up. I mean, I know a lot of teams that we were playing are up in Wisconsin. Madison has a great program. Our good old friend Rizzo up at Badgerland is phenomenal at covering all of it. But I think, you put a team in Milwaukee, like you already have a feeder system ready to go. Like I think they would be kind of strong out of the gate.
For sure.
Because they'll have the selects ready. They already have that pipeline ready to go.
Exactly. And, we actually had plenty of people attend Chicago Hounds games that were up in Wisconsin. As you mentioned before, our boys from Appleton, who quickly became one of our best friends as far as teams go. I have a fellow Steve over there who I absolutely love. They're good guys, and they would absolutely love to see some rugby being played in their own state, because they even will come down and watch our Chicago game from now and then, and that's like a 3-hour drive for them or something. So I think
that's all for them.
There's absolutely a market for these guys. So I think they should strongly consider Wisconsin. Another state I want to talk about, which is very much a sports state, is Ohio. Now, plenty of competition there. You got the Browns, you got the Bengals, and a million other sports teams, I'm sure. But these Ohio people like to hit people. They're one of the top football states in the whole country, so there's plenty of athletes there. I'm sure they already have a decent rugby program too. So
my thing is, what city would you put them in Ohio? Because we've had the debate with XFL, USFL, where the college doesn't transfer over. So it's like, do you put it in Columbus where Ohio State is, or where it's, I wouldn't call it center of the state, but it's it's not Cleveland, it's not Cincinnati, where you're kind of opposite corners, or do you put it in Cleveland and Cincinnati and just hope for the best?
I personally would
what
go
do you
with.
think would be the best one?
I would say Columbus, because there's not a professional team there now. You mentioned it's in the middle of the state. I think that's a good move for them. I think I would go Ohio, Columbus if I were the MLR looking to expand. Speaking of expansion teams, didn't you say that Miami is looking to start a team next year?
Yeah, no, they got approved. I think they got approved the same time as Chicago, or when Chicago got announced. But they're not starting until the 24th season.
Okay.
I don't remember what their name is though, but they'll be starting next year. Finally, getting a team in Florida, getting another to the southern market.
Overdue.
I think will be a good step.
Absolutely, and it seems to be overdue. I can't believe there's not already a Florida team going, but good to hear they're getting going with that next year. Dan, what are some of your picks? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I kind of tagging on the Florida thing real fast before I jump in on mine. I just I kind of feel like the Florida can be very touchy because while yes, this isn't like the plus side is it is an outdoor sport. They're more than likely playing in an open air stadium. Like a lot of people vacation in Florida, they want to go out to the beaches, they want to do this, they want to do that. So we've seen baseball teams struggle down there. We've seen other sports struggle down there. Your beloved Tampa Bay Lightning do very well though, but we've seen other teams not. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I know Orlando SC, yes, it's soccer, but still, they do fairly well. So if that's any indication on what to expect during that time of the year, because the MLS season does run concurrent with the MLR, that's a promising sign. And Miami's such a diverse community that you have those Central America areas that people are going to come out and probably watch as well. But I think all in all they'll do well down there. But I think it'll be interesting to see how much buildup it is to how much you see off the bat.
Absolutely, and yeah, I mean, it is a little difficult getting it going sometimes. Obviously, the Jacksonville Jaguars should probably move out of there because they're still struggling for attendance, and now they're having like multiple games in London every year. So the Jaguars should probably bail, but you have 3 NFL teams in Florida. It just seems a little unnecessary to me. Maybe spread the love a little bit. But, if you're not stacking 3 different teams in there, I think it could form a good market because, I mean, I love my Buccaneers, but let's be honest, Dan, they've won 2 Super Bowls since they've been around, and those were the good years. Other than those years, we mostly suck. And yet, the Tampa Bay fan base is strong, and they always come out to support their boys. They stick with them. Miami Dolphins, one of the historic teams. They've been around forever. That's a very strong fan base as well. So I think once these people buy into a team, they stick with it,
No, for sure. So, I mean, I'm not too worried about it. I think they did their due diligence in terms of putting a team down there. And they're just getting an MLS team down there too. So I think, kind of all the commotion of that will help it out.
Absolutely. Should be exciting times. Dan, what are your picks over there?
Yeah, so, I'm going to start off with one that was a city, but got tied up in some issues, to put it safely, was Los Angeles. I think I've referenced this on another episode of ours. It's a great market to have for sports. Sure, there is a lot to compete with, but if we're trying to put a West Coast foothold, that's a great city to do it. They're natural partners to San Diego, to Utah. So I think, get them back in the mix. Excuse me. And, run it out from there. Another one is St. Louis. It has nothing to do with how well the XFL's done there, but You and I both know from playing. We saw the team in Nash Bash that we faced in the semis. Was a St. Louis program, so there is a strong rugby presence in St. Louis, in that Missouri area. So I think they could definitely field a team. Um, where they would play, I don't know. They just got an MLS team. Maybe they play them there. We've seen that with some other MLR teams as well. But I think that could be a strong city to play. You already have that rivalry with Chicago, St. Louis with baseball, so maybe you can transcend over there. I mean, and as you had mentioned, I have Milwaukee on my list as well. So you can kind of do straight down the belt of Milwaukee, Chicago, St. Louis. It'd be a nice little setup there in terms of like kind of a round robin trophy type thing if they want to look into that
For sure.
for there. Another one I have, which would help that northern swing with Milwaukee, Chicago, and I mean you could throw St. Louis in it, is Minneapolis. I think they have some good programs out there as well. And then just kind of reaching that market. Minneapolis is a great sports area. The St. Paul, Minneapolis area could definitely support a program playing in the MLS venue again. It's kind of seems to be a common theme, but their field size works very well for rugby, obviously, with them both being European. And also the key is their capacities are very friendly to it. They're 20 to 25,000. They're not playing anything extravagant. But I think that could be a great market for them to break through. And, maybe let's get some interesting games in the snow up there.
Absolutely, that could be really cool because I actually had a coach in college who had played in St. Paul, so I know there's a strong rugby presence over there in Minneapolis, and they should absolutely consider expanding there as well.
And then another one that I had that we touched on earlier was Phoenix, Scottsdale. You can put them anywhere in the Arizona area. Now this one is interesting because actually there's the USA Sevens like Premier. I don't know if you've been reading about them lately. They're starting up here soon, so they just dropped all their cities. I apologize, I can't remember all of them offhand, but one of them was Pittsburgh. Actually, I think Pittsburgh would do very well. I know my brother-in-law's one of his best friends has played in the Pittsburgh area, and their program has been around for an extremely long time. I know a lot of the teams out here play that corridor of Pennsylvania as well. And Pittsburgh is very about their sports, so I don't think there's a doubt that they would get behind that team. I know the Premier Sevens team is called the Steel Toes, so I think
Cool.
that's pretty cool.
So this Premier Seven,
Their jerseys,
this is a whole separate league. They're just going to be playing sevens.
yeah, it's a whole separate league, men's and women's sevens set up for that. So I'll have to get that info over to you, but I think that could be a great market. You tie them into Old Glory if you get that team in Ohio. You have New England, New York as well in the mix. That could make some really interesting fits there. And then the last one, Nashville. Nashville has been going on for almost 40 years. I mean, teams come from around, quite honestly, the world.
Yeah.
They have teams from Canada come down. Again, that's very a loose term for the world, but
Yeah.
Teams come from all over North America, let's just call it that, to come play. You, me, Taylor, we packed bags and drove.
Went down there last year. This last year too.
Yeah, so teams from all over. I think expect imagine if they had a Nashville home game the weekend of Nashville. Like that'd be sold out in 2 seconds.
Absolutely, for sure, I would go see that.
So 100%. So I think that's a great market for them. Could you float Memphis in there? Maybe. So you have a little interstate rivalry. They're far enough apart. They're not cannibalizing each other. And then, you can pair them up with NOLA Gold, Miami, that they have in Atlanta, Rugby Atlanta. So that can make it like a nice little pairing there. So I think that's a viable market now. Interesting question to you. With the expansion, do you just keep it east-west, or do you break it down further? Because part of me wants to keep it with the way it is, like, sure, you have more teams per conference, but you just, instead of like 2 teams, like now it's 4, there's 6. Like the top 4 teams, 6 teams make it in, and you do a bracket off of that. Versus divisions, it's kind of a very European style. That's what you'll see with. That's how actually the MLS does it. Copy a lot of the soccer leagues over there. I believe some of the Premiership rugby over there does that as well. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good idea. So the question is basically if we think it should just be West Coast and North expansions.
Well, no. Like when we add all these, if you add all these teams, do you keep it East versus West, or do you do like a Mid-Atlantic region or division?
Oh, so like 4 different divisions.
Division.
I mean, I think that's
I
think that's the ultimate goal. Is to have 4 different divisions. The U.S. is so big. Ideally, there's going to be more and more MLR teams every year, and you are going to eventually need to expand to probably about 4 different divisions. So yeah, I would say you keep a North, South, and West division.
Okay.
East as well. I would say that. Yeah. I mean, that's how the NFL does it, and they've been successful with it. It's how most sports do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's how most sports. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. For
one thing I want to throw at you real quick, Dan. Canada. We kind of forgot about Canada when we were talking about these expansion teams. Obviously, the Toronto Arrows are the only Canada team right now. They've been less than successful over the last couple of years. But do you think there's a market there for maybe Vancouver? I don't even know.
No, I think Montreal could be another good one.
I hate the city of Montreal, but they think they're French, and the French think they're really cool. So yeah, they're basically they're like pretentious French people. It's like you're not even French, dude. Relax.
Yeah, I loved when I went up there. I had a good old time, but that's a whole other story.
Okay.
But
I did not. But anyway, no. Also another story.
Well, I mean, I think you're right there. Like we did kind of neglect them. Vancouver to me is a prime target, just with its proximity to Seattle.
Yeah.
So you'd instantly have that rivalry there. I know you're not a big fan of it, but I would say Montreal.
No, I mean, even though I'm not a fan of it, there's definitely a market there.
And then, because part of me is like, do you need them to be close to the border? I mean, like, you could do a Winnipeg, you could do a...
I mean, the NHL makes it work.
Yeah, it's like, do you copy the NHL cities?
I think so. I think you kind of go for the cities that are already coming down to the U.S. to play some type of sport. You already have that connection. I think that would make sense. That you just kind of follow in the footsteps of the NHL. Obviously, they have 5, 6 different hockey teams in the NHL.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the safe bet to play. Let's try to mirror those. And I mean, we don't really see this too often. I saw it more when I worked for an indoor soccer club. We had Mexico teams. Do they look into adding Mexico teams?
That could be interesting. It's not something that has happened in really any of the other sports, but I mean, why would you discount Mexican rugby? Although what is going on with the Mexican? What is going on with the Mexican rugby? I didn't even hear about them this last World Cup run.
No, I mean, and it sounds very ironic that I bring it up because I don't know really anything about the Mexico rugby team.
Right.
But we've seen more sports. The NFL, the NBA, the MLB are playing games in Mexico.
Yeah.
And clearly, these leagues think there's a market.
100%.
So maybe it's only a matter of time.
And Latin America, it likes rugby. It's safe to say that they like rugby. So I remember when I was in Costa Rica, they had started a rugby league down there. So it's going on probably 20 years now of rugby down there. I have a buddy who played there. So Costa Rica's doing it. And as we know, Argentina is one of the better teams in the world. So there's definitely a market for Latin American rugby. They're passionate fans down there. And, aren't they going to get tired of just watching soccer all the time and baseball? They're probably going to want to see some people get tackled every once in a while.
I would imagine. They were in the 2019 World Cup qualifiers.
Mexico was?
Yeah, I just looked it up. Apparently, as of August of 2020, according to this website, August 2021, they were 42nd. So,
They're struggling
maybe
a
there's
little
a
bit.
market.
But, maybe you get an MLR team down there. It's going to start striking up some interest, get these Mexicans to realize that they can play. There's another way out of the poverty besides just soccer. I mean, heck, it's got to be competitive as heck trying to just make it in soccer in Mexico. Like, dang. I'm sure everyone plays. And it plays well.
I mean, yeah, I would imagine it's really competitive down there.
For sure.
I don't know. I can't. I'm on the World Rugby website. I can't.
There's just not much data about these guys, huh?
Not that I'm finding.
Interesting. Dan, did you have any other teams you want to talk about as far as cities are here in the U.S. that you thought would be a good expansion?
I think there's a lot that we could do. Sure. Before we hopped on, you had mentioned somewhere in Colorado, Denver, whatever. I don't know if altitude would be an issue there,
Right.
but there was originally a team there in the early MLR days. We we can really nitpick on where to go, but at the end of the day, maybe does Louisville have a market? If you're trying to capture that their team in Indianapolis, like we were talking about prior
Yeah.
show, putting the team down in Indy. So if you could do that little cluster of Columbus, Indy, Louisville, maybe throw a team in the Detroit area.
Right.
As well.
Michigan's a little neglected.
But I think the keg's tapped in the Northeast. I don't think you can really put anybody else up
No,
there.
especially with how good the Free Jackets are.
Yeah, between having Toronto and New York,
And
the
those are
Free
all
Jacks.
they're all pretty good teams. Well, New York and the Free Jackets are really good teams. So
Yeah, I mean, I was going very back and forth on my list when it came to do I include Philadelphia?
yeah.
Because I'm trying not to get too stereotypical when it comes to cities. I think one that I did leave off earlier was Charlotte. I
Oh
think
yeah.
Charlotte would be a great market
Certainly.
for a team, especially because it's a very up and coming city in the sports
Right.
world for that. So, I don't think there's any that we like. It's egregious that we left them out, but I think we got to hit the big ones. There's always debates about putting a team in Utah and Salt Lake City. We've seen things work. We haven't seen things work.
Well, the Warriors are over there now.
Oh, yeah, no, the Warriors are over there too. Yeah, sorry. That was more on my XFL list. I apologize.
Okay, I know.
You know, so, I think we're kind of good there. You play dangerous games with California and Florida, like you had
Yeah.
mentioned earlier when we were talking the Miami swing. It's very easy to load those states full. Sure, you could probably look at San Francisco, look at Sacramento, drop all them in there, or Tampa, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Orlando.
Right.
You could flood these cities, but at what point are you cannibalizing yourself
100%.
when it comes to that? I mean,
And it
I
turns out
don't
there's
know.
52 states, Dan. I don't think they need to be doing extra cannibalizing.
No, not by any means. I think for now it's better for the sport to stay spread out. Do you put a team in Vegas? I don't know,
Couldn't hurt.
because that seems to be the hot city right now.
For
They
sure.
got an NHL team, they got an NFL team. They're trying to put an NBA team there now. Looks like an MLB team is going there. I mean, there's already a AAA baseball team there, but they're trying to just stuff everything in Vegas right now while it's hot. So maybe it doesn't get the support it needs. My concern is where do they play? We've seen that struggle in the XFL. Now, granted, we had talked about the Stan Boyd thing one time. Is it prevented UNLV set up this thing to prevent any football team playing there? So they're not football. So maybe they could use old Stan Boyd Stadium. in Vegas. If not, I have no clue where you're going to pack them in.
Right.
I mean, maybe you could pack them into the minor league baseball team, but that is an option. And maybe throw one in Portland, Oregon. I don't know.
Yeah, Oregon's another good option as well. The Portlanders are always looking for something to do. I've heard it's a pretty depressing city, so I'm sure they could use something to do.
Yeah, no, I think the key though is I want to see more West, Mississippi West teams than Mississippi East, because we are starting to get a little. I mean, and the problem is, this is literally every league you look at, they get so East Coast heavy.
100%.
It's true. That's where all the big cities are. Like, I get it, but I think we could see more in the Midwest West Coast swing. I want to see for the next go around.
I think the rugby culture is really strong in the Midwest, so I think it's 100% something they should capitalize on.
And that's why I'm so surprised that it took till now to get Chicago in.
Right. Yeah, and like Chicago has been terrible, but man, the attendance is good, and our fans we're always fired up and excited to see them play. They almost took that New York game, and let me tell you, that stadium was going wild, man. We were all crazy watching that game, so it's there for the taking, absolutely. The Midwest is certainly a solid market and something that should be considered, for future expansions.
No, I think it needs to be taken a lot more seriously than it is. So,
not a flyover state, man, all right?
We're more than cheese.
More than cheese, dude. Dan, any last thoughts here for the people and their lives?
No, on their lives. Ooh, that's a big one. No. Do what makes you happy. I'm pretty sure I've said that before, but I stand by it. Make sure you turn in to the Rugby Network. Watch your games every week. And if you got a game near you, go to it.
Absolutely. It's going to be a blast. You'll love it. One thing I want to throw in for the people here, I've talked to George McCaddy. He's been on this show before. But he mentions how in England, adults always sort of find a sport to do. Like, they get past a certain age and they always are going to stay doing some type of sport, whether it's soccer, whether it's rugby, whatever it is, they continue to do this, as opposed to the United States. Now, as a rugby guy, I'm always out there trying to recruit for the Rockford Ravens, and the amount of ex-football players who are like 24, 25 years old, and they tell me, nah, I'm done, man. Nah, I played football in high school. I'm all set, dude. It's like, dude, you're 25. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? What are you going to do for the rest of your life, bro? You're going to just go to work and come home and, not play a sport on a Saturday? Not have something extra to look forward to, not go make new friendships, not go have a blast, go to something like Nash Bash, or even just play a home game. Like, I had so much fun this last home game. I played like trash, but it's a fun experience. Playing rugby as an adult is amazing. Play any sport. Even if you want to go play soccer, go join a baseball team. Whatever. Stay active, people. All right? You're 25 years old or whatever your age is. Stop throwing in the towel of life. Because guess what? We're going to be here a long time, man. It is so long, this life. And for all we know, they're going to be developing longer technology. And we're going to have to live even longer, Dan. So, yeah, do not throw in the freaking towel at 25 years old and say you're done. All right, your knees will recover. You'll be fine. Get out there and do something with your life. Sports by Compian. Out.